broadcast network, AfterBuzz TV. Over 20 million weekly downloads in over 150 countries, and your number one source for after-show entertainment. AfterBuzz TV, the destination for TV superfans. Producing aftershows for over 300 of your favorite TV shows. Interviewing celebrities and showrunners. And bringing you behind-the-scenes exclusives. All thanks to E! Entertainment's Maria Menounos, producer Kevin Undergaro, and internet leader Akamai. Now, let the buzz begin!
Welcome to AfterBuzz. I'm your host, Fern Ronay.
Hi guys, it's Megan Stecher.
And you are watching the after show for Real Housewives of New York. This is season 7, episode 7. It's called Family Matters, and that was, of course, the theme song to the show, Family Matters. And we both have a Steve Urkel connection. When I lived in New York City, I saw Steve Urkel, the guy who plays Steve Urkel. I don't even know his real name.
White.
Oh, very good.
Come on now, Fern.
I saw him at Bowery Bar one night, and you...
He comes into the restaurant I work in all the time. He loves our restaurant.
I love it. Very funny. So,
he's more of a Stefan Urkel than a Steve Urkel.
Yeah, these days.
He's smooth. He's like smooth grown.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very nice. All right. Well, all right. Let's get right into the episode.
But just
yes, please go ahead.
Just an aside. It's just the two of us tonight.
Yeah. So, should we be checking the Twitter? Maybe we'll check the Twitter.
I'll keep an eye on it.
Yeah. Okay. So it's hashtag ABTV. RHONY. So tweet us. We love getting your tweets. We have so many lovely fans. Let's get right to it. It started with Ramona's birthday party at a restaurant called Fishtail. That's a restaurant I don't know, but I love to hear about all the things that go on in New York since I left. So all the new restaurants, all the fun stuff everybody's doing now. So tweet me those things too, because I love it. And all 8 of the ladies were there, every single one of them. It looked to be in the middle of the day. There was limited alcohol, so no fights broke out. But, you know, there were conversations amongst the ladies. It was interesting to me how one of the first things Bethenny said to Carole was, you know, she walks in and I think Heather said to her, like, "Hey, Mama." And she's like, "What's with the mama?" I think Bethenny and Heather just lock horns because they just have 2 personalities that are very strong, very smart businesswomen. We know from previews they're going to get into it, and you can see it already. There's just this immediate tension. Do you feel it too?
Yes, and I don't know if it's maybe it's their energies kind of knock when they meet each other. It's weird because everything Heather does or says really is obnoxious to Bethenny.
Yes.
And I can't figure out why. It's not like Heather's done anything that Bethenny should be really irritated, but it's just one of those cases where you meet somebody that you don't really want to be friends with because you just feel like, I don't really vibe with that person.
Yeah.
And Heather does not feel that way toward Bethenny. I think Heather feels like
Exactly.
we need to get to know each other.
Exactly.
She made a bad first impression. I'd love to be friends. We should be hanging out with her more. And I feel bad for Heather.
I feel bad for Heather too. It's like she can't do anything right to Bethenny.
Bethany was giving this, like, you know, the courteous, like, how are you, like, fake smile at the Upper East Side luncheon. And poor Heather, I mean, the second Heather's back turned, it's like, why does she call me Mama? I hate this.
Yes.
I thought Ramona explained it well.
Yeah. What did Ramona say?
She just said, like, you know, I think she's cool. She thinks it's cool. Like, it's just her fun slang.
Yeah.
But then Ramona went on to say something like, it's
ridiculous.
not cool. You're not a rapper. You're an Upper East Side girl.
From the Berkshire. Yeah. So I feel like Bethenny also has mentioned that she's very guarded. It's very hard for her to make new friends. So that's obvious. But none of that's Heather's fault. So poor Heather. So Sonja was also there along with her Swami priestess.
What the heck is that?
Poor Sonja's like, I'm going to do everything you told me, Bethenny. And Bethany's like, I didn't tell you to do any of those things. I don't know what you're talking about. So, yeah, they were at odds too. But at least Sonja's making an effort, and I don't know.
I was very interested in what the Swami priestess was talking about. Something about, I'll teach you how to step into this corner of energy, or something about stepping into the pocket of energy. And I thought, that sounds fascinating. And also crazy, right? But really fascinating.
Yes, I think it sounds wonderful.
Sonja totally buys into it.
Completely.
So if it's healthy and works for her,
exactly,
whatever is going to help her,
exactly. I'm all for energy healing, all of it. But I also feel like, I'm also into herbal medicine. I'm with you, Sonja, but as my best friend from home would say, who got me into herbal medicine, if I broke my arm, I'm not going to take echinacea. I'm going to go to I'm going to go to a medical doctor. Yeah. So like if there's something, there seems to be issues that Sonja has to heal, and I don't, I think she should do those things along with some traditional medicine, and I think that's what Bethenny was trying to say, like get some
I think
traditional
Bethenny
help.
Really wants her to just go to therapy like she does,
right?
Because she finds it so helpful,
right?
And when it all boils down to something, I think that's exactly what it boils down to in one sentence.
Right, and you're exactly right. So, because, speaking of therapy, we see her go to Dr. Amador, and they have a good conversation. She mentions the failed talk show, the failed marriage, that she's just in shock how it all went down. She's very guarded. She doesn't trust getting to know new people, new guys, new friends. And he mentioned, he put it an interesting way. He said, you feel betrayed because you thought you met this good guy, and it didn't turn out to, it didn't work out. But I think of betrayed as, I don't think he cheated on her. There certainly wasn't any talk of that. And Jason, to me, seemed like a really good guy. So I don't know. I mean, we can, we can only speculate. I don't know what went wrong. I have a feeling it was, there's always more than one story.
Yeah.
How relationships are complicated for some people, and who knows what really happened. But I thought that was an interesting choice of words that he said betrayed. Yeah. What did you think of their conversation?
I also wrote down that he said he tells her she feels like she can't trust her own judgment.
Yes.
Which I thought was good for her to hear.
Yes.
Just to be like, you're right. That makes me feel better. For you to get that from what I'm saying.
Right.
Kind of helps her part the clouds and see something on the other side. I think when it comes to the Jason and feeling betrayed, I want to use my crystal ball and look into it with my super psychic
Go ahead
powers.
with your Swami Priestess powers.
I remember from her solo show with Jason, a big fight with the two of them. They were about to go on that. They actually flashed back to it when they were on
the boat.
The boat.
Yes.
They were about to go on the boat for the whole couples healing weekend, and Jason and her were in a huge fight in the car, and he didn't want to go. He stormed off and was like, "I'm not going," and they were fighting over the fact that she was so angry that everyone always thinks that he's such a good guy and she's
perfect
and she's always wrong and the bad person and everything. So I'm wondering if there was things going on that were never on camera, that he was very careful about what he did and said on camera, and that he was a whole other person behind camera or when they would fight.
Yeah.
And she's very angry that he gets to look like the good guy.
Yes. That makes perfect sense.
I think through tabloid stuff, which may or may not be true, it kind of seems like it's a whole other side to him that no one knew existed, that he's fighting her tooth and nail and saying all these nasty, horrible things about her, that she's hysterical crying on the stand saying this is not true. She's relaying all these things on the stand that he's supposedly done, allegedly, or said and done, and maybe that's what the therapist means about you feel betrayed because you thought he was a good guy.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And it's so funny to me that she said she didn't trust her gut instinct, which you never betray your gut. It will never steer you wrong. It is there for a reason. I'm one of these crazy. I'm all with the Swami Priestess. I think it's your spirit guides telling you, run away from this person, run away from this job, go in the other direction. This is not your path. And when you ignore it, it's always a mistake. And it seems, for all these books she's written, everything she's preached for years, she seems super smart and so wise that it shocked me that she would be someone to ignore her gut instinct. But even someone as smart, as wise, she really takes things that she's experienced and finds the lessons in them. And that she ignored her gut instinct says it can happen to anyone, and she's learned from this experience as well. So even Bethenny.
Yeah. Well, her new book is called "I Suck at Relationships."
Yes, which I haven't read it, but
it's basically the premise of it is, hey, I ignored my gut, and also she's trying to relay the fact that because of my past, I have a terrible time with relationships. So, you know, she mentioned sabotaging things. And, you know, I just started reading it, and I have a hard time when I start reading at night in bed, staying awake more than 2 pages. So I'll try to keep everybody posted on what's going on.
I'm sure it's good because she's funny, and she, you know, and I know she writes her own books because she's such a, you know, smart, and she's a smart businesswoman. I'm sure she wouldn't let
her voice when you read it. Yeah. Well, Dr. Amador kind of co-wrote it. She'll have an entire chapter, and then he'll have a couple paragraphs at the end like, well, it's all well and good that Bethenny feels that way, but she's wrong. So it's his professional opinion after her writing her whole thoughts on things. And this is the way it is. And men are like this. And if women were like this, everything will be fine. And then he'll write 2 paragraphs saying, like, with all due respect, no. But, but you know, that's okay.
That's a good way to do it. That was smart. All right. So after Dr. Amador, we move on to... This was a strange thing to see, but Carole, Kristen, Luann, and Ramona went to a boxing match, which, I mean, that's just not something you expect to see on the Real Housewives of New York.
It's like a hilarious scene.
Yeah, and they're getting sweat on, mouthpiece folds on the ground. Carole mentioned something interesting, that she got into boxing because of a documentary that she'd seen, and she also was taking testosterone at the time. So I don't know if she's the next Bruce Jenner.
Is that in one of her books?
I don't know.
She was taking it as an experiment. I'm wondering if it was an experiment for something she
for
wrote
story?
in the past. Right.
Yeah, I don't know. Very interesting. I hope she clarifies. But Bethenny wasn't there. She was invited, and Kristen made a remark. Kristen actually was having the greatest time, it seemed like, but I think it seemed like she was thinking, I'm here, I'm getting sweat on, I better just like act like I'm having a good time.
Right. Maybe
make
she
it
had
fun.
A couple drinks and
then got into it.
Yeah, and it was just like, this is fun. She was having a great time.
She's so funny. But she said, you know, Bethenny, I have kids, you know, you can make an effort. That she feels like Bethenny hasn't made an effort. They had just, you know, this is early on in the season. They have all only just met, and they're trying to get to know each other. So, you know, it's the equivalent of like, it's the new people, new office mates. You kind of want to get to know your coworkers. You're on a show together, and she feels that Bethenny's not making the effort. But we both, when we saw this, were like, okay, we love Kristen, but if this poor woman never gets to see her daughter, we know she's in a bitter custody battle, and she lives for her child, and we don't blame her. You can't blame her.
I think did I gasp?
I think so.
I said, because I just know, like, obviously, and Bethenny said it later in the episode, obviously there's no choice. I'm going to spend the weekend with my daughter. I'm not going to choose getting a babysitter and going out. Luann had a good point that maybe when she's asleep you can go out, but, like, I think I wouldn't even be comfortable. I don't have children, but I feel like if I were Bethenny, I wouldn't even be comfortable with that. I'd want to be home all night knowing she was
Exactly. She probably stares at her while she's asleep because she seems so heartbroken to be away from her for any amount of time. Yeah. So you can't blame her for that. But after the fight, they go to what looks like a bar in Times Square, and they are all having drinks. So this is Luann, Ramona, Carole, Kristen, and Heather.
And steamed vegetables.
And right.
What was that? They are the nightmare table. Like, look, I wait tables when you walk up and they start like, oh, I'll have this, I'll have that, normal drinks. Then one person throws off the juju. One person's like,
to go gluten-free.
You know what? I'll have a mint tea. I'm sorry, this is a bar. Okay. And then the next person's like, well, just because she did that, I want a gluten-free beer. And then the next person wants steamed vegetables.
And then it's Nightmare City. Yeah.
That's one of those tables that you're like, I wish I could add automatic gratuity to this one because...
Well, when they saw the cameras, they should have run the other way, but I guess they had no choice. So they had to serve the steamed vegetables and gluten-free beer. So it was going fine until someone says, how's Adam?
And then Kristen did it.
Kristen.
Stir in the pot, Kristen.
You could hear a pin drop. Awkward. And Luann says, you know, she makes a legitimate point. He's young, which is none of her business, but the legitimate point being he's my niece's ex, which has to be so uncomfortable. Fine. But, you know, as Carole points out, they weren't together when they got together. And, there's kind of a debate on how long the niece and Adam were broken up before Carole got with him. It kind of, I mean, I guess it matters and it doesn't matter, but they weren't together when they got together. So she didn't break anybody up. The niece and Adam are still friends. They were in Nicaragua with a bunch of other people on a trip. So, and they're still together. So they obviously like each other.
I'm wondering if Luann is so defensive about this situation and for her niece because maybe Adam broke up with her niece and she feels like this loyalty of, well, my niece isn't over it yet, so...
Yeah, and it's just a stab in the heart to my niece, and she probably loves her niece to death.
I thought it was crazy how Carole brought up, well, we're stuck on this island, and sometimes you just meet people through people. And I looked at Fern and I was like, this is the most populous city in the country, right? Am I saying
I have to say, though, when I lived in New York, I would see people I knew all the time, like all the time, and it wasn't the neighborhood they live in or anything. No, constantly.
So
like
that's
the
crazy.
island of Manhattan is so tiny that if you're like up at 7:00 in the morning and going to get a cup of coffee, and you have no makeup on, and then you see someone you went to college with, like it happens to the best of us.
Okay.
I'm speaking from experience.
Okay.
And like it's so funny how you just become, the circles just started, kind of. It's how I met my husband, through my best friend from law school's co-workers, cousin, the circles they just mingle, and it's so small, and everybody starts to get to know each other. And I used to run into people really quickly. I used to run into people on the street, and close friends or acquaintances, and my friends and I would say, like, there was an episode of Sex and the City where Miranda and Carrie ran into each other on the street, and we were like, people are probably watching that thinking, like, that never happens in New York.
Right.
It happens all the time. So, I mean, I don't know if that's a good defense on Carole's part to be like, that's why they're together.
Right.
But I mean, it does happen. I don't know if that's a defense. And then Luann said he was Sonja Young, which wasn't very nice. And Carole kind of gasped, and I thought she was going to defend Sonja, but she said, "Don't compare me to Sonja."
She was very upset by that statement.
Yeah.
Well, then she went on to say, Luann's such a hypocrite because she dated a younger man for, was it 4 years, and they moved in together?
Yeah.
4 years.
Yeah.
Jacques, right?
Yeah, Jacques. She was just had a picture with him on Instagram.
But the Sonja thing being thrown in really offended her. I don't know. I guess because maybe because Sonja has more of a hookups
That's
than
what Ramona said. Yeah,
okay.
She said she kind of just uses them.
Okay.
Yeah. But Sonja's probably watching this being like, way to defend me behind my back, all of you.
Poor thing.
Yeah.
She's getting really beat up this season.
She really is. But then Heather made a really good point. She was like, this is the most excited I've seen Carole.
Right.
And Luann said, I'm happy that you're happy.
And then they did like a sweet little handshake thing.
I think they really did get over it, but Luann was on Watch What Happens Live and said something happens later in the season that they fight about, and they have not gotten over it. So that's why the nasty tweets and kind of the nasty comments are happening, because they're in a fight about something else that happens later on.
It's really nice to see them just disagree for a minute, and then just be like, well, let's let bygones be bygones. It is what it is.
Yeah, it was really nice, because Carole was like, I appreciate that you're happy.
Because I feel like normally we see the tiniest things explode, and everyone's mad at everyone for 2 weeks, and it's ridiculous.
It gets nuts. So there's something else happened, so we'll have to wait and see.
Maybe it's Turks and Caicos or something.
That's where the good stuff usually goes down when they go on a trip. So speaking of trips, Bethenny goes to Miami, and she meets up with her best friends from high school, and ultimately she says he's the only father she really ever known. So she had her mother had her at 20 with her father. They got divorced. Her mother married John when Bethenny was 4 years old. And it was by all accounts a crazy childhood. There was her mother tried to commit suicide in front of her. I can't even say that, and I don't know how to say that just straight, because it's just too horrendous for words. Drugs, abuse, the mafia after him for gambling debts, a gun in the glove compartment. I mean, just a crazy childhood. And she said that she would see him be physical with her mother, and he even at one occasion got physical with her, because when she was 19, she went to his house to pick up the rest of their stuff. Her mother and him were splitting up, and they got into it physically. So after that, at 19, she didn't speak to him again for another 20 years. But that being said, all of that, she considers him her only father. Her real father, we know what happened with him. He passed away without reconciling. Her mother, we know she has a terrible relationship with her, and it's very sad, but she really is fond of John despite all of this. It's pretty clear that she loves him.
Right.
So we can get right to their meeting, and then we'll go back to the other few few things that happened, but this was the major story of this episode. And what did you think of their meeting? They seem to, she's really fond of him despite everything.
I thought that was sweet to be able to see her connecting with a parent, because the mom has all but been cut out of her life permanently, probably forever. Her father passed away. So her stepfather, the fact that he's still alive and they did have a good relationship, you know what struck me was it seemed like such an easy conversation at first for two people that hadn't seen each other for 20 years. I was like, they're so relaxed and just da-da-da and breezy. It's breezy.
Yeah.
I'm breezy. Old friends reference. So I thought it was such a good conversation and almost seemed healing at first until he told her, you just have to get over it. And like let it go. And I'm thinking like, oh my God, has he not been watching her do all this therapy on TV for the past like 8 years? Oh my God, how could dare you tell her just get over it?
Yeah, and he had apologized, and it should have ended there because she was like, I really appreciate that. So if I were advising him, I would say just say you're sorry and let it end right there. Don't bring up she didn't call you for 20 years, because she countered that with, you know what, it wasn't because he said you got rich and you didn't want to have anything to do with me. And she's like, I haven't been rich for most of the 20 years that we didn't speak. Like, I really could have used a father. And what else did he say?
Well, you know what? What I thought was really made me really sad for Bethenny was when she kept saying, like, I was the child.
Yes.
I was a child.
Yes.
It was, and you could see where how she mentioned that they would treat her like an adult, that she was never the kid.
Yeah.
Because he was like, oh, but you haven't called me for 20 years. And she's like, I was the child.
Exactly.
And you can't be telling me that my mother was out cheating on you and beating her in front of me. Like, I was the child.
Right. She should have been protected from all of that.
Right.
It's so sad.
It made me sad. And you know what else was? It seemed like all of her therapy was really serving her well, because in the past, I think we would have seen Bethenny just like hysterical crying, go off the rails. It wouldn't have ended well.
Right.
And she was able to say, to kind of make amends at the end, and they hugged it out, and they were going to go get a drink, is how they left it.
Yeah, which is amazing.
Yeah.
Because, I do believe that, fine, good or bad, your childhood is over, but she makes a good point that her childhood was so outrageous, and there were so many mistakes made that over the 20 years, particularly the 14, when she had no guy, had no money, the adult could have reached out and been some comfort to her. Even though she was an adult herself at the time, he was the parent figure in her life, and he never reached out during that time either, it sounds like.
Right. And she cut him out because he physically, I don't know if you call it assaulted. There was a physical altercation with them. And
it sounds like that was never resolved. Like, he never apologized for that. I don't know.
I would think that the burden's on him to come to her with an apology.
Exactly.
I mean, it is on him to come to her with an apology. So the fact that he's like, you didn't talk to me for 20 years. Well, duh.
Yeah. Poor Bethenny. I hate to say she never had a chance because she's done all right, but you would think that, like, you have to kind of understand. And
I feel like issues. Probably it was a really good thing for this all to be on camera tonight, because her current castmates, I feel like, can forget or haven't even seen all of the stuff that she's put out there already on camera.
Yeah.
Because a lot of them are newer to the Housewives than she is. And it's a good reminder for them of where she's coming from when they attack her being such a strong energy and coming off so rude. And it's like, well, look at what she's dealing with and where she's coming from.
Yeah, I really felt for her. That being said, before he got there, before she met with her friend Terry, she was like so rude to the waiter. We were both like, is she kidding me? Like, so despite, your horrible childhood, no one should be rude to anyone. Like, she's just so abrupt sometimes. We were both like...
And sometimes it's really funny, and sometimes
hysterical.
I'm like, what is wrong with her?
Right. She's outrageous. But it's so interesting to see this other side of her.
She tweeted a little bit during the live show about it, and she wrote, oh my God, I do not want to watch this. Very uncomfortable. I cannot breathe.
Oh,
poor thing.
Well, hopefully, because they said they'll meet up and meet Brynn, so hopefully there's been some mending, and hopefully he just says, I'm sorry, and leaves it at that and puts no blame on her, because really, she was the kid. Poor Bethenny. We love you, Bethenny.
She's
we all have our issues.
She wrote something funny about Sonja, but there's a curse word, so I won't say it.
All right. Well,
you guys can read it. And no one's tweeting us, so that's why I'm reading Bethenny's tweets.
It's okay. So speaking of funny, there are 2 more funny scenes that we should talk about. Dorinda and Ramona at the gym was hysterical. But I love that Ramona said, I'm dating. I'm happy for her. And I loved her assessment of John. She said some really good things that he's crass. But that's not just why she doesn't like him. She said, I don't know if he cares for Dorinda the way she thinks he does. And I think that hits the nail on the head.
We both were like, oh, yes. Like, just out loud. Like, yes. Like, writing down the quote. I think for the viewers, that's how, whether or not it's editing, that's how we all feel.
That's how it feels from what we've seen. And I know they're still together. I know she's got pictures of him on Instagram. I hope his intentions are good. But it just feels like she's more into it than he is.
Yeah.
And it doesn't help that he's crass and you just don't see those 2 together. But
and it's strange because it's constantly argumentative and he gives into everything she wants, which we talked about with Dr. Fran.
Yeah.
So she's really winning all of the arguments
that we see.
But
I don't know. There's just their energies. He just doesn't seem that, even though he lets her get away with things or lets her have her way in these arguments that we see on camera, which, is such a small snippet of time, it just doesn't feel right to the viewer. And, we agree with you, Ramona. So hopefully we wish Dorinda the best because we know she's been through a lot too. And another funny scene, Luann and Bethenny are at the art fair in Miami, and Luann's daughter, Victoria, was displaying her art. And that's what I love about Bethenny. She's like, isn't that great to her friend? Like, she really roots for other people. It's so nice. And then they go see the art, and it's about exploring the role of feminism in the art world, which in this interpretation means Victoria is naked in a photo.
It's a self-nude.
Like I don't know anything about art.
I forgot to write down the information on the little placard.
Yeah, I read it and I didn't even really understand it. It was like photo something. I don't know. Did she have someone take a picture and then she paints it? I guess we'll learn more. If you happen to know, please tweet us. But
I'm assuming that someone took the photo
something
of her
like that
for her,
and then she painted over it,
or it was some kind of art illustration program maybe on a computer. Okay. I don't know. I thought it was really beautiful.
Yeah, no, she's a beautiful, beautiful girl, and it was so sweet to see Luann be so choked up about, she's so proud of her daughter, but it was hysterical to see Bethenny's reaction.
I know. No, I felt like Bethenny because here's the thing. We were introduced to her daughter as a really young woman, like a junior high age
like Jackie O riding the horse.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so to see her with her cool John Lennon glasses, were they like fully round like John Lennon's
I think
shades?
She had these shades on indoors.
Yeah, of course. And she's like a little Miss Artsy and herself nude, and I'm like, oh my God, I just saw your vagine.
Yeah, all right.
So I had the Bethenny reaction of
me too. Yeah, we both were like,
she's
what?
Naked.
Yes. Oh my God, hilarious. So it was such a fun episode, and except for Bethenny and John, but that was interesting.
I wanted to mention, I liked how Luann and Bethenny had that conversation where she was like, I'm just letting you know, everyone says you're being a little too guarded.
Yeah.
I liked that she took it well.
Yeah.
Because I kind of thought old Bethenny to me would have been like, screw you. Screw you guys. I'm home with my daughter. That's more important to me. But she saved that for her interview.
Yes.
And she said it in a nice way. She said, there's no contest. My daughter's always going to win out over hanging out with the girls.
Completely understandable. Yeah.
So
it seems Luann is the deliverer, so we can get into predictions now.
Oh, yeah.
And now, your AfterBuzz TV predictions.
So much longer than you think.
You brought this up, I think, right? That Luann seems to be the deliverer of all of the bombs this year. All of the
is that what I said?
I don't know.
Wait, but just now when we were watching?
Yes, and then in the previews, she seems to always be the one to bring right.
I said something about she's really not taking any stuff this year.
Yeah, no,
she'll
no
just
way.
Stand up for herself.
Yeah,
and it's refreshing because it seems like it's really not resulting in fights like it used to.
Yeah, which is nice. But she seems to be the deliverer of I don't know. Okay, so we see a confrontation between Luann and Ramona.
Yeah.
Where there was like a she said at what seems to be
some kind of
dinner party. Yeah, something. So I just feel like Luann is like she's not taking it. She's like saying like.
Right. She just speaking her mind this year. I remember making a prediction at the end of the first episode, how we all made our predictions for the season. I said, I think Luann's going to be like the villain this year. And I don't see that happening, but I do like her almost having that Bethenny energy where she's like, I'm not going to take it. I'm just going to say it how it is so that this doesn't fizzle into something worse, slow burn into something worse.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good prediction. I see it. I see it happening.
Well, I mean, I guess she's not the villain, so my prediction's wrong. But
no, but she's really standing. Like I feel like she's not
this year.
Yeah, she's a full-time housewife for sure.
Yes, and she's not getting that apple taken away.
No. And Carole and Bethenny, I think we predicted, I could be wrong, early on that they would bond, and I see it happening for sure because in the preview showed them bonding with Bethenny crying. But yeah, it seems they have a natural chemistry, those two.
They do.
I can see them being friends. It makes sense. And Ramona and Mario is still going on because it seems like she's saying he wants to get back.
About
and Dorinda's
with Dorinda.
Yeah. So do you have any other predictions that we didn't see? Predictions
I don't have any predictions other than what
I'm terrible at predictions.
I really want to see the Turks and Caicos trip, but it's calling it a day.
Are we getting cut off?
Okay, guys, find me on Twitter and Instagram at Megan Stecher.
You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Fern Ronay. And my husband is the creator of the Shit My Pants ad, and you can vote for his ad. YouTube celebrating 10 years of famous commercials. So go to my Facebook page and vote for my husband. Thank you.
Bye. See you next week.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz, see you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.